Which pruner should you be using for your pruning in your garden? Well, that depends on the type of plants you've got to prune, the time of year you're pruning, and obviously the size of the plants as well. Now we have softwood, semi-hardwood and very hardwood as well, including the small diameters and obviously up to a larger diameter, which is big enough or is large enough to fit in between the blades of your cutting tool. Now there are secateurs and they're bypass pruners as well. The difference between the two, and we'll start with the secateur, folks. I've got this, the general bypass secateur here. What they have is a single blade and it's tapered on the one side and flat on the other side. And then you've got the base framework which the blade slides past. That's why we call it a bypass. And if you have a look at it on this side, you can see it slides right past there, making a clean cut as you need it to. The thing about these here, because it's flanged on one side or tapered on one side, this side here should always be facing closer to the center of the plant, leaving you a clean cut on the plant side. That means the blade has to be closest to the root system of the plant or the stem of the plant. That's your bypass. Now, the other one we talk about is a Anvil pruner. Now, what the difference is here, it actually doesn't go past the side, but instead lands on the base plate there, the framework itself. So as you do the cut downwards, you can see how it just stops and hits the base there. Now the blade on the Anvil pruners is actually tapered on both sides, so it's not flat on one side to slide down the base framework, but tapered on both so that it lands smack on there. Now what's the purpose of these two different cutting techniques? Well, for me, and I know if I go back in history in horticulture, they swear by a bypass. They will not touch any other blade or other type of cutting tool. That's what they said. Every horticulturalist, every gardener should be using a bypass. And that's true. You should be using it, but not only a bypass, folks. This is our typical standard of the run-mill secateur, bypass secateur, and then we can go up in size and quality. So we go up to the next one. I think this is the number 5, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see that. That's a beautiful lowy one and a nice easy one to handle as well. Oh, I think this is 14. I can just see the stamp on it there. So that there is the next size up or quality, and then you can go up to the larger one which has a huge opening on it. That's one thing about the bypass secateurs that I don't like, is that you got to sort of use it 2 hands to grab a hold of it because it's so much larger than your palm when it's fully extended. So you want to be able to sort of have it at this point here, but you can notice that the opening here is very narrow, and that's what you want. You want about a 10 or 12 millimeter diameter opening that you can slide into the bottom of there. I'm not going to cut my finger off, although it's tempting for you guys. So that there's what you want to be able to do in the full open, but if it's only open to that sort of point there, which is insufficient for the cut that it's got to do, well, that's not going to serve the purpose. Let's compare it to this one here. So that's fully opened. This is fully opened. Slightly smaller. This is the smaller of the Anvils that I'm holding here, but you can see the handle where it stops there. Completely different handle construction. So ergonomically more friendly, I find these, even though they're more of a straight handle, they feel more balanced in my hand. I just sit it there, see how I've got it right on the edge of the handles and the top of the blade is hanging over the edge, comfortable. I'll do that with the next size up as well to give you an idea. This is the number 1, the most popular one. Again, the handle opening, let's just start with that for you. Look how much smaller it is in the opening when it's fully extended by comparison. And then the opening in the middle, pretty much the same there, if that helps. Sorry, let me get it in position to give you an idea. So the Anvil, for the same opening cutting blade, opens only about 2/3 of the way compared to the bypass. So the larger the pruner that you buy in a bypass, the bigger the spread is on the handles when they're open. Whereas this is the largest you get there, and it still has the same opening. Now, another thing to understand about these units here is these are centrally balanced when they're bolted together. So their pivoting point is centralized between the 2 blades. So it slides perfectly closed. There's no difference in the opening or closing action in there. Whereas the Anvil ones, they're off-centered. That's the pivot point there, the central point. It's not in the middle of the 2 blades where you'd imagine it to be there. So what you got here is an elongated look on the blade itself, which sort of sits above and almost looks like it's sticking out further than the bottom. But the purpose of this offset pivoting point is that, so when you close it, you see this slicing action happening. Now, the reason why I'm explaining all this to you is so you can understand which pruners to use for what application. So that slicing action that you see there happening takes a lot of the pressure or the torque out of your hand or the wrist. You don't have this over time of doing 100 prunes a day, if you're pruning fruit trees, your hand becomes so tired from the squeezing action, because a lot of the work is done by the cutting blade in that slicing action as you close it. And you can see it's done beautifully. So the pressure is far less to cut the same size timber when it comes to using a bypass. And I'm going to demonstrate them right now, show you what it is to prune with a bypass, the same wood, compared to a Anvil pruner. So what are we using for? Well, for me, bypass, no matter which size or shape or design you like. You can have a rolling arm for the ergonomics and the arthritis. Hands, I can't handle those. It feels like it's going to fall out of my hand when I'm using it. No matter what size or shape, I reckon these are really good for softwood, first year wood, and maybe semi-hardwood, but up to a certain diameter. So that is a small semi-hardwood. They're quite easy to cut with a bypass, but let me show you what happens when you cut it. Let me just start off with a little piece. So we've got a perfect piece like this. See the reading on top? That's going hard there, so that's hardened off there, where the soft part of it is on the underside where the sun hasn't shined. So that's a semi-hardwood. As it gets older, it'll become a hardwood. So I'm going to position it right in the middle there like this, and I'm going to hold it to you like this. I want you to look at it from this angle right there. Right there, see it? So as I cut, when you're ready, when I cut, watch what happens. See how the timber starts to slide over, leads over, and they flick away. So that's because the blade is sliding down the one side. And this is a very sharp blade, folks, obviously. It should cut it quite easily, but if it was a hardwood, it would be more dramatic or more evident with the movement. But see, as I'm pressing now, see how it's tilted to one side? So downward pressure, squashing and compressing on this side. That is why that when you cut and I'm down on a piece of wood, the side the blade slides down to, the piece of wood that the side the blade is on should be attached to the plant, not on this side. So always have the blade facing the plant side. See that little flick that happens? So that is the compression and the offset of the blade itself that causes that to happen. Now we'll do the same cut using the Anvil pruner. The piece of twig, this is our Anvil pruner. This is the small one. Look how beautifully balanced that is in the hand. Hey folks, have a look at that. That is what you want to do. Okay, let's get back into it. So we center it like that. All right, we got it perfectly centered. Have I grabbed it right? There we are. And now as we press, it should not flick any other way, but cut straight down and fall in your hand. That's a clean cut. As I said earlier, back in the day in horticulture, everybody should have had a bypass, and that's the only thing they use. But I can tell you, a lot of the growers, commercial growers, once they see these little ones here, and this is for small hands, even the big burly hands that I've seen out there in the farms are using these for their vineyards, for their orchards, because they're nifty, they're simple, they get in there and they take a lot of pressure out of the torque required for the squeeze. And the cut is clean. It is actually super clean. On semi-hardwood, it will cut small timbers as well, softwood, but ideal for semi-hardwood and hardwood. So now we've done a small demonstration on the little twig like that. Let's work up to the larger ones. Now what I've got here is a branch from our pear tree. I'll use the bypass, the small one, to cut it. That's the number 5, if I'm not mistaken. I keep getting these numbers wrong. But anyway, this is the one that I used to cut it with. Cut it through there. The thing about when it does do a cut like that, hello Vader, that's okay, mate, you can go the other way now. The thing about the cut here, come on boy, good boy, stay there, is that it does bruise a little bit of the bark on the bottom of the stem itself, which lands on the base here, almost like a chopping board, so when you're pressing down. Now, look at that. That is not the right size Secateur to be using, or Anvil pruner to be using here, so it's right on the tip there. So this is too big a branch to be cutting with a small one. Ideally, half the size is the maximum size you want to go. Let's go with the big boy. You can see that is beautiful. It's almost all the way in there, so it can handle quite easily because it's not even halfway. Now, I'm going to use the one hand to cut this and see if I can squeeze through comfortably. Done beautifully. Again, a little bit of damage on the bottom side, but that's very significant for the amount or the size of timber that it's cutting. Now let's try it again with a bypass. Ready? Yeah, okay, and it flicks it out. A lot more pressure required. I'll give it one more go so you don't think I'm mucking around. You can see, hey, I've got a strong grip, folks, but this is way too hard. All right, let's have a look. Again, where it touches the bottom frame, still cops a little bit of damage there. So that's the outside because we were holding it with the blade facing in. Hence, when you cut this way, if this was going towards the center of the plant and I cut it this way, let me use two hands because it's super hard, it should be a much cleaner cut, sort of, although it did flick around a little bit. So we've done a cut there, much harder to use a bypass on this. And again, let's go back to the big one. With one hand, little grip, a lot easier by comparison, folks. And again, a little bit of bruising on the underside. But again, that's away from the plant and shouldn't be worried too much about that. So, bypass versus anvil. For your roses, for your new growth, your lavender bushes, your hebes, things like that, folks. All the small plants, 1 year old growth on fruit trees, citrus trees, not a problem. And a good thing about these, because they've got a pointy end, you can get right into the middle. For example, like this little side branch here. Let's say we want to remove it. Now I'm holding the secateurs upside down because I need the blade closer to the main part of the plant there. I'm not holding it the right way up like that, which is the normal way, but you can see the blade is away from the trunk and the damaged side will be remaining on the branch itself there. So turn your secateurs upside down and then cut right close into there if you need to, and you do a nice clean cut like that. And sometimes you'll find you'll have branches that are really close together and it's hard to get the anvil pruners in there because they're a little bit bulky and chunky, so they don't really get right into there as you'd like them to. So for that sort of purpose, small plants, bypass are perfect for that. For branches like this, and you've got a lot of them, well, you just want to be able to slice them off like butter. Look at that. That is really good. And it feels like slicing into butter, folks. So bypass and anvil, they're the difference. Soft hardwood and super hardwood and up to index finger or thumb, depending on the size of your fingers, is what they'll cut quite comfortably with the one hand. And anything up to a pencil thickness is what I recommend with these ones here. Otherwise, you're really going to struggle squeezing them continuously throughout the day. Anything softer than that or smaller than that, well, knock yourself out. Which is your favourite? My favourite? It's the anvil. And speaking about lowies, folks, well, we've put 6 packs together of the lowies and a pruning pouch and a sharpening stone, and we're giving 6 away. Now, this is the low number 5. As you can see, beautiful little pruner. The pouch, which you can hook onto your belt, and a little sharpening tool here, which will give you the sharpening side, and a little sponge on the end there where you can put a little bit of oil and rub it on your blade once you finish sharpening it. 6 of these will be up for the running to win. All you got to do is spend 250 bucks. They're worth 125 retail. So shop 250 online, you go in the draw to win one of these. Only 6 to give away. We're drawing it in a week. Further details on our website, vasiliesgarden.com. T's and C's apply with all that. And don't forget to redeem your points, folks, because we're coming to the end of our old website and very close to launching the new one. And we'll be in Theberton on the 8th till the 10th of June. Lock it in your date and put your orders in to make sure you can collect them. We'll pop in and say hello and shop in store as well. As well, our other stores are all open as well. Check it all out at vasiliesgarden.com. From me, Vasili, Baresi.